Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figured Out Baseball. I've got a really good Figured Out Baseball podcast for you today. We're being joined on the podcast by Mike Deegan. He is currently the head coach at Dennison University, a very, very successful Division III program in Granville, Ohio. I'll give you a quick background on Coach Deegan before we jump into questions with him. He, going into 2022, this will be his 10th season as the head coach at Denison. He's a 2001 graduate from Marietta College, one of the most, if not the most successful historical Division III programs in the country, Division III program in Marietta, Ohio. While he was there, he was a two-time all-conference player, and he was a coach there as well. From the springs of 2004 through 2012, he was an assistant coach at Marietta. While he was there, the team Marietta won 3 national championships in his 9 seasons. Pretty incredible. They won the national championship in 2006, 2011, where they won 47 games, and 2012, where they won 48 games. Pretty unbelievable numbers there. While he was at Marietta, the team finished 326 and 111 overall in 9 years. Only 111 losses in 9 years. Pretty incredible. 2013, spring of 2013, he was named the head coach at Denison. We'll fast forward to get some highlights here from some recent seasons. In 2017, the team finished 29 and 12. They were ranked most of the year in the top 25 in Division III baseball. First time that they've been ranked in the top 25 since 2004. The following season, 2018, the team set a new school record by winning 32 games. They advanced to the NCAA Regional Tournament for the first time in school history. Coach Deegan that year was named Conference Coach of the Year. He also coached the Conference Player of the Year and Pitcher of the Year in 2018, as well as one All-American, only the 6th All-American in program history. In 2019, the team finished 39 and 9, setting another new school record for wins. The team advanced to the NCAA Regional Tournament again in 2019. They won a school record 17 straight games at one point. He coached another All-American that year, and during the 2019 season, Coach Deegan became the program's career leader in wins. 2021, the team finished 27 and 13, won another conference championship that year, and advanced to the NCAA Regional Finals, one game away from going to the Division III World Series. Coach Deegan was again named Conference Coach of the Year for the 3rd time. In his time at Denison, he's compiled a record of 197 wins to 106 losses. He was inducted into the Marietta Athletics Hall of Fame in 2018, as well as the Pennsylvania Athletics Hall of Fame in 2019. He is also the owner of a website, CoachMikeDeegan.com, which is an online leadership website that offers leadership courses, a weekly newsletter, a blog, and also it's one of the places you can find his book, which is called Let It Rip, Life Lessons Learned Through Sports. Coach Deegan, thank you so very much for being on the podcast with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to sit down and talk.
So I typically like to start with something from the bio that stands out. And what stands out to me, people that listen to our podcast enough know that I really like talking with guys that win, and it's something that you've done a lot in your career. I want to go back to your time at Marietta as a player and then as a coach. Obviously, as a coach there in 9 seasons, you were on a team that won 3 national championships. And you went right from winning a national championship to taking over your first head coaching job. So I want to kind of go back to 2011, 2012. You're finishing up your time at Marietta. Obviously, again, one of the most successful, 9 straight seasons that you could have as at a college program. And I want to go back to that time and just kind of talk about what you learned at your time at Marietta to prepare you for becoming the head coach at Dennison University.
Well, I think, when you're thinking about Marietta, and you referenced it, I mean, it's just good of a baseball school, and I'll throw divisions out the window, and I say that with the ultimate humility, but just talking to baseball people in collegiate baseball, and even pro ball, the name Marietta is synonymous with just being a first-class organization. And I think, when you're at Marietta, I didn't know when I went there as a player, I didn't know. I knew the winning, I knew the success, but I didn't know just how I was getting an apprenticeship, basically, on how to run a great program. And so as a player, it was one thing. I think you take for granted just how it's run, because that's kind of all you know. But then as a coach, you get behind the hood, you get underneath the hood a little bit, and get to see the ins and outs of what it takes to run an elite organization. And I think you can throw out baseball, and just think of that as an organization, from the attention to detail, how you go about trying to be the very, very best is something you can't read in a book. It's something that, you can have all the informal conversations you want, but to actually be immersed in that type of culture is something that I'll always cherish. And like I said, I say that with humility because it wasn't something I sought out. It was something that I was given. And I think from there, once you've been given that, you want to give it to others because it's a different way to operate than most people are able to do. And so I think when I reflect on my time at Marietta, that's what it is. It's a peek behind the curtain. It's a lift under the hood of just what a special organization it is.
Once you got to Denison, things ended up happening pretty quickly for you guys as far as the success that you had there. But you've been there for a long time now. You're going into your 10th year. Can you talk a little bit about how you've changed as a head coach from when you first started until today? Maybe whether that's philosophically or whether it's just how you approach players or what your goals are from year to year or, whatever it may be, Coach Deegan. Can you just talk about how you've changed, if you have, as a head coach in your time at Denison?
Yeah, I mean, I think, growth and development are really important to me. It's, one of my life's ethos is based around the word Kaizen, which is continuous and never-ending improvement. It's a hallmark of our program, but it's also my personal life philosophy. So, you always want to improve and grow. And if I were to just, as you asked that question, I'm kind of reflecting. For me, a lot of it is just kind of coming into my own and trying to be the most authentic, best version of myself. I think when you play at Marietta, and I played for a legend in Coach Don Shalley and worked under Coach Brewer, who will be he'll be an ABCA Hall of Famer himself. They had a different style. I mean, Coach Shalley was, from the era of like World War II, where very military-like and very disciplined and structured. And Coach Brewer has his story. He's from inner city Baltimore, tough and rugged. And I honestly, Jeff, I felt like I had to be like them in order to be successful. And I should have known better because when Coach Brewer hired me at Marietta, I remember mentioning this to him, and he said, I don't need you to be like me. I don't need you to be like Coach Shalley. I just need you to be you. And when I became a head coach, I mean, I think at first I felt like I had to be like them. And also we were trying to clean up a program as well. We were also, changing a culture and trying to get rid of some bad habits as well. So I was a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more trying to be like the mentors that I had. I think as I evolved, I'm much more like myself, and I think I'm leading from a place now where I'm unapologetic about who I am, and that's someone who's trying to grow and develop still. But I also know I'm at my best with trying to create really good relationships and trying to lean into those relationships. So I'm probably a little bit more vulnerable than I was when I first started, and like I said, I'm proud of that. I think I'm proud of that, and I think the people that raised me in the game would be proud of that as well, because they knew that I can only be as special of a coach and as a leader as I can be if I'm true to my values and to who I am as a person.
The website that you've got, Coach Deegan, was that something that you planned out for a long time, something you had thought about, or did it come as a result of just the education that you've got about leadership and how important it is, and you felt like it was something you needed to share? I'm interested just kind of how that ties in to who you are as a coach, what you've learned, and kind of what you just said, a little bit about your growth as a head coach, and just as a coach in general, even from your days as an assistant coach. But where, at what time did the website come about, and what exactly led to it?
Well, I appreciate you asking that, because honestly, it's gotten kind of lost over the years. It's been by far the best thing I've done in my career, to be honest with you. It's been so impactful. The people that from writing and sharing, the people that I've been able to attract into my life are it's just, I can't really describe it. I mean, it's been so special for me. But the origins of it, it had multiple layers. The first is I'm somebody who doesn't have a ton of hobbies. I'm a 36 handicapper in golf, so you don't want to play with me. I don't enjoy that time hacking the ball around the golf course. I really run a baseball program, like to exercise and like to spend time with my family. And my wife would say, hey, you need an outlet. Like, you need to get something out there. And we would watch games and things, and she said, you have all these, like, really interesting things you say during a game. You ought to start writing. So that was, like, really one of the first main impetus to making me write was my wife saying, hey, you ought to just get some of that stuff out of your head and onto paper. And then there's also things like this. Denison's a national school. And we were starting to, get right into the years where we were raising children. We have 4 young kids, and I probably started to write when we had 2. But I knew I wasn't going to be able to travel and be the road warrior that I was as an assistant coach. So writing also was a way for me to get my thoughts and ideas out there. And by hitting send, it goes into the world. And I think it's also a recruiting platform because one, people get to know, who I am a little bit. That's one thing. But also, I think more importantly, is they know where I stand on certain issues. I mean, I think you can't read my stuff without knowing that Denison is going to be a very team-centric organization, right? It's not going to be a place where it's not about the individual and flair and that type of thing. It's about us trying to share a common purpose and grow together. So it was a recruiting tool as well. And I think ultimately what it is, Jeff, is it's a place where I can flush ideas out. I have all this stuff in my mind, but writing forces me to put a framework behind it, and then sharing it, I get the knowledge and the expertise of all those people who read and then give me feedback. It keeps helping me shape and formulate ideas that I never would have had. So for all those reasons, and then lastly, I would say it's my way of helping. It's my way of staying connected with people that I've met in my life over the years, and it's a way to share some of the gifts that I've been given. Like I said, the gifts by just being exposed to really cool things and being able to share that with people that may not have the fortune that I have to encounter those things. So all those reasons, you have a website, and it's like I'll end with where I started with this question. It's just been the most beneficial thing that I've done for myself professionally is sharing those newsletters.
When you're writing your newsletters and you're sharing things about yourself, I don't know if this is a good question or not to ask, but are you as much doing it for yourself as in sort of a cathartic way as you are to trying to reach other people? Like, are these things that you feel like you need to get out and you just you almost feel better, almost a therapeutic feel to writing, or is this something that you're doing because you think that these are important things that you just that you need to share with other people in order for them to have the same growth experience that you've had?
It's actually, you said it, if it's a good question, it's actually a great question. And it's often sometimes one where it gets misrepresented. I write for what's on my mind, right? And what I'm trying to flush out. And it's a gift and a curse. I have a mind that doesn't shut off. When I watch sporting events or whatever, when I watch any television show or when I read, I'm constantly trying to think how it can make our program better, how it can make other people's lives better. So I have that mind that's working like that. And then when I write, it's just for me to flush things out and to try to put a framework around things. And so I write for that reason alone. I don't really write to help others. And, I've had people say that, like the quote unquote haters will say that I'm trying to tell people how to live or whatever. That's like the furthest thing from it. If you read anything I write, usually it's just me grappling with, ideas, and I'm trying to figure out my stance on things. And like I said, by sharing it, you just open up and you get the expertise of others. And that's what's been really cool for me. But yeah, Jeff, I don't claim to know anything. I just claim to be someone who's curious and that's trying to figure things out. And writing's my way of flushing a lot of that out for myself.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Diamond Kinetics. No matter what season you're in, our friends at Diamond Kinetics are here to help you train smarter, get better, so you can dominate on the field this season. DK's line of mobile-based motion technology products give players and coaches the ability to practice smarter, practice more effectively, and have more confidence in the box and on the mound. DK's Pitch Tracker, Smart Baseball, and mobile app provide easy-to-understand data, metrics, and pitching analysis right at your fingertips. You'll immediately see velocity, spin rate, and spin direction on all of your pitches. And newly updated features such as auto pitch detection, plus newly added metrics such as spin efficiency and horizontal and vertical break, help you to get command and control over your entire arsenal of pitches. With Diamond Kinetics, you will train smarter and get better and have more confidence on the field this season. Coach Deegan, the website is something I'm really interested in. I don't mean to spend too much time on that during the podcast, but it's something I really am interested in, especially the online the leadership courses that you offer. Can you give people, not to make this a commercial or anything, but can you just kind of tell people what the leadership courses are about, who they're for? Are they for teams? Are they for individuals? Is it just, for coaches? Just kind of curious for you to give sort of a synopsis of what people could expect there if they're curious about it and would like to check it out.
Yeah, I have a friend that says I'm allergic to money, so I have a tough time selling things. But what you find on the website is there's different buckets, right? You have, I don't even know what it is now. It's probably close to 200 articles that are free and they're based around a few different buckets. Leadership, professional development, sports parenting, right? As a parent myself and as a coach, as what I do for a living, there's a certain expertise there as well. So you have buckets there that you can navigate for free. Then there's also the book on there as well. My book that, there's a link to the Amazon.com, which, is a good time for a good stocking stuffer. And then the leadership courses that I work with, and I partner with a group called ClearLearn, which we're trying to provide affordable education for people. So the courses that I have one on culture development. The people that have bought it are everyone from Fortune 500 companies to high school coaches. But it just gives a framework on how we went about trying to develop culture. And culture is a bit of a buzzword, and I know people cringe when they hear it, but to me, it's really trying to create an environment where your people can thrive. So there's a course on culture, and then there's also a course on people development. People development, to me, it's the greatest competitive advantage out there. It's how can you scale the people within your organization? How can you create environments where they're able to flourish, and then it also helps the bottom line of your company. So those are the two courses, and like I said, it really runs the gamut. I think there's always going to be a sports-centric theme to it, but so many of the companies that I work with and interface with, there's a lot of ex-athletes within those organizations, and it really resonates with them. So yeah, you get on the website, there's free content, there's cheap content, which is the book, and then there's the course, which is a little bit more expensive, but affordable as well. And I think it's just my way of, once again, trying to give back and trying to share the things that I've learned over the years.
And the subtitle of the book is Life Lessons Learned Through Sports. And I think anybody that spent any time coaching appreciates that aspect of sports, just what you're learning through these sports. And not to go off on another rabbit hole here, but I've been in a conversation the last couple of days on social media with one guy who's pretty well known, pretty well followed on social media, who said he can't think of one good reason why high school athletes who want to play a certain sport in college would play any other sport. Why they'd be a 2 or 3 sport athlete in high school. I had my thoughts and feelings about that, but I'd like to ask you, because I'm not here to present my feelings and thoughts so much as you, but you as a college baseball coach, what would you say to a high school athlete who is a multi-sport athlete, wants to play baseball in college? Would you encourage that guy to play more than one sport? Do you think that they're should they at some point focus just on baseball, or are there times for doing both of those things? Just curious, with you and someone who's had as much success as you've had, what your take is on that situation, because I think it's becoming more and more of a debated topic in high school sports these days.
Well, I can give you, without seeing that your banter, I can just give you my my gut response and not really take sides on it. I'll just say this. I don't believe in one size fits all for anything. You know what I mean? Like, I don't say, every kid should play as many sports as you possibly can, or for this kid you should just specialize. Like, I don't live in that world. Like, I do believe in a gray when it comes to a lot of this. So, but where I am pretty passionate about, Jeff, is I am concerned if you were to ask me, and I'm in the minority on this. I do worry that our games become so future focused, meaning what are you doing to get to next level, whatever next level that may be. Because that next level keeps moving up and up and up. As a parent of young kids right now, I hear it. I'll hear that the rec league isn't good enough for if they want to play ball as they get older, and then what travel organization is best going to prepare them for high school. And then when they get to high school, it's like, okay, I don't want to play injured ever because it's more important for me to be ready for college. And then they get to college. In college, I'm so worried that college is okay, but if I do this, it won't prepare me for pro ball. And really, when I hear that, I really hear people that aren't focused in the present moment, and they get robbed of like really special opportunities. So this isn't a moral high horse stance. It's more just a reflection of, there's special moments playing high school football. I like basketball a heck of a lot more than I like baseball in high school. I was much more involved in basketball than I was baseball, and I value that time. I also valued my high school baseball experience, and I valued summer baseball experience. So I just worry that there's such a focus on the future that just go really enjoy now. I will say, if you're a really good athlete, you'll have a shot, and I get it. I mean, I'm part of the problem. College coaches, we want certain metrics, right? Like we want that. But if there's a really good mover and a really good athlete, I mean, I think it's our job in college is to try to develop them and make them into really good college players. But on the same token, I also have respect for a kid who's at a high school with 5,000 kids, and people say play multiple sports, but it's really, really hard to make your high school baseball team, and it may require more individual time spent on that. But what I will say, whether it's in an organizational multi-sport athlete or whether it's just being someone who goes and plays pickup hoops, there is definitely cross-training benefits that I think are hard to argue. That playing baseball year-round probably isn't the best thing for your development, meaning, and I don't mean, like I said, even playing high school basketball or high school football or high school soccer or whatever, but playing pickup hoops or playing rec hoops is going to help you in some way. So more than I have a stance on multi-sport versus specializing, I more have a stance on try to enjoy the moment. Like, you can't get that time back, and the next level isn't always better. It's not. I've been fortunate to coach a lot of guys who've been able to play pro ball, and they don't love their pro experience. It's not like you get the pro ball and like the whole world opens up and it's the best thing ever. So just enjoy where you are and be really good where you are and see where it takes you. I work from this lens, and I apologize for the rant, but you're not going to the big leagues. You're not. You're not playing in the NBA, and you can push back and say that maybe you are, but those people are unicorns, and if it so happens to be you, then awesome. But so many people lose special moments trying to chase something that really doesn't exist for 99.9% of the population. So just go enjoy your experience, try to be a great teammate, enjoy all the beautiful things that sports can provide, and then just see what happens. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's just where I am at with this subject.
Well, I think it gives people a really great idea of, just where their focus should be. I really like how you said that so much, and I don't know if it's this way in other sports or not. Obviously, I'm much more involved in baseball, but you're right. In baseball, it's always like, instead of focusing on where you are now, it's kind of, what can I do now to get me to the next level? And you're right. Kids are, in my opinion, it's not just kids. Kids, families, coaches are worried about other things other than what's right in front of you. And one of the big disappointments to me is when people, kids don't put all their effort into where they are right now because of something coming up. And just one quick example of that is I went to scout a player once. I'm an associate scout, and I go see games in my area. And there was a high school player that I was kind of following, and He at one point held himself out of a game or told his coach he had to be on a certain pitch count in a playoff game, I should say, because he had this is like on a Tuesday or Wednesday game, because he had a showcase coming up on Saturday and needed to be fresh for that. Meanwhile, his team, which he was a single A team, he was by far the best player on that team, and he was only going to pitch 2 or 3 innings that day because he had to be fresh for his showcase on the weekend, and that's where I kind of grit my teeth sometimes. I wish people sometimes would focus just more on what's right in front of them. No, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that you're going to, if you don't end up playing in the big leagues for a long time, this could be one of your best moments of your life, and you're missing it because you're focused on what else is coming.
When I hear that, when I hear you tell that story about the player, it reminds me just, for me right now, I hate to say this, I don't always love going to watch games because, and I think it's because baseball's become a very internal sport, very individualized, where, the result of the game almost doesn't matter. It's more about what did I do? Did I go 3 for 4? Did I pitch well? And by pitch well, a lot of times did I hit a velocity number, a goal? So it's really become individualized, and in my opinion, baseball is at its purest, at its best when it's a collective. And so in our recruiting talk, that's where I spend a lot of my time, is talking about, here we're going to play and play to win. And to me, the lowest hanging fruit when we get kids that come on campus now is teaching them how to play winning baseball, because there's such a gap there, because it is such an individualized game, and it takes some rewiring. Because when they call home, what's the first thing people ask? How'd you do today? And the answer is usually, I went 2 for 4. But it's not about the wins and losses. And so that's what we're trying to rewire and make it about the team and not so much the individual. Because I'll be the first to say it, I think baseball is very boring if it's just all about you. I really do. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
It's a good 2 cents. So you have that issue. Generally speaking, in youth baseball, but then they come to a program like yours, and I really like to talk with coaches who run good programs, who have a lot of success, because obviously there's a lot of things that are going right, and those are some of the conversations I really enjoy having. So what do you do, Coach Deegan? What is the plan? What's the process to get the players, when they come in, and it's been sort of ingrained in them that they are the most important thing. Their performance is what matters the most. As you said, you call home or call grandma and grandpa after a game and, hey, how did you do? Oh, I went 2 for 3. Hey, it's a good game. How do you get it from that to focusing on the team and what an individual can do? Because, baseball is a funny game because it is a very individual team sport, meaning you have a one-on-one competition every pitch, right? But at the end of the day, it is about the team, and your individual successes are only important if they lead to a team win. How do you change the mindset of these players once they get on your campus? Obviously, what you're doing is working because of the wins and loss column and what you've put together in your career there. So you've obviously you've got something that's working there. Do you mind kind of sharing what your process is with the players once they get on campus with you?
Yeah, I would say so. First of all, I don't want to make it sound like we have it figured out, because we don't. But it's a daily fight. So I think any coach who's listening knows that this is a fight every single day. But I will go back to the newsletter, and I don't mean to. That's not a plug, but we start by trying to attract the right people first. To me, it starts even before they arrive on campus. There's a filtering process that needs to take place. Now, I'm not saying everyone we enroll here is going to have that selfless mindset, but I think a lot of people, when they do a little research on our program and on us, they're going to see these things right away. They're going to hear about it when we recruit them. I don't have any problem saying it. I go on a soapbox about how, at our level, everyone comes to us with a hitting coach, a pitching coach, a strength coach. Like, everyone has that now. To us, the lowest hanging fruit is to teach people how to play winning baseball. So that all starts before they arrive. Now, we talk in our fall, so in Division III, we're limited on our exposure to our athletes, the amount of days we have. So the majority of times, the days that we have with our guys, we play. Like, we play baseball. We play baseball with the scoreboard on. We play to win and to compete. Now, we do that within a developmental structure. So almost all of our teaching, coaching, development is going to be through the game play. That's how we feel like that's the quickest ticket to teaching winning baseball is through actually playing baseball. We almost look at hitting coaches, pitching coaches, etc. They're almost like subcontractors of ours now. I'm no longer like when I played. The coaching staff in college they were the experts on the mechanics and things like that. I'll be the first to admit, Jeff, we're not. Like our pitching coach is pretty elite, so I'll keep him out of it. But myself, I'm not. Like I'm not that person. So it's now just can we teach them how to play? And I think for us, it's to go back to that buzzword of culture. But I think our older guys believe in it. They believe in what we're doing, and they believe that's the best way to play with joy. But it is a fight, and you nailed it. I mean, there is an individual component to all this, and I'd be lying if I said that we don't all want to go 4 for 4, or we all don't want to be the Friday night starter. But if you can get people to buy into a team concept, I do think that's the sweet spot, and it's something that we're fighting for on a daily basis, is try to create that environment where it is about us. And my last thing about this, and I'm sorry for being long-winded on this, but I do think in good programs, you'll realize that the star rotates. So the person, you go 3 for 3, but you hit 2 dribblers through the 5-6 hole, and you can't run. It's not really that valuable. But if you can be a guy that has a tool like a pinch run tool, and you come in late and steal a base, like that guy provides a lot of value to the program. So it's really trying to celebrate everybody in all their unique ways that they can add value to a team is what we really try to focus on.
And that story is something that I think gets lost in amateur baseball a lot because of the way that pro baseball has progressed. And you and I talked about a little bit about the pro game before we started recording here. And in pro baseball, whether you like it or hate it or you agree with it or disagree with it, Major League Baseball has become a lot about strikeouts and home runs on either side of the ball. But college baseball is still, to me, if I can say this, a little more of a pure form of the game where like you said, a guy that can come off the bench and play really good defense is very valuable to a college program. A guy that can come off the bench and steal a base is very valuable. A guy who's, maybe has 1 or 2 really good tools, and those aren't big time velocity or a great secondary pitch or, plus power or whatever it may be. You can still have other tools and be very, very valuable to college level, whether it's just a pure hit tool where you've got a really high batting average and not a lot of slugging, like that's really valuable. Or a guy that can really run that is good with the short game, and maybe it's a left-handed hitter who still does hit ground balls in the 5-6 hole and finds a way to get on base. Then he's still second, then he steals third. That stuff is super valuable in college baseball, whereas a lot of that stuff has lost value at the pro level. So I want to talk to you a little bit about now recruiting, Coach. You've kind of we've been sort of leading up to this for the last couple questions, and I want to talk to you about recruiting and how it's done within your program and how you go about getting the right kids during the recruiting process. Are there certain things that you and your assistant coaches are looking for on the road? Are there when you're physically watching a game, are there certain tools that you're looking for specifically? Are there things during the recruiting process, during conversations or on visits? How do you all go about narrowing down? And you can start as general as you want to, even with physical traits, because I think that's part of this is people want to know, okay, a really good Division III program, what kind of, physical tools, what kind of athletes are you recruiting? Maybe you start there if you want to, and then maybe narrow it down to how you get, quote unquote, the right kind of person, the right kid, the right fit for your culture. And I love the long-winded answers, so don't be apologetic for that. I'm probably setting you up for another one here. But can you talk about the recruiting process and just how you guys go about trying to get the right kids for your program on campus and eventually on your team?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I mean, I think it has to. There's two things that you have to have these two things. One, there has to be a certain talent level, right? Like I'd be lying, right? I would be lying through my teeth if I said it was all about character and hustle and toughness and things like that, because we're trying to compete on a national level, so you have to have a certain skill set that plays at a national level. Now that's going to look in a million different ways, and we could do our own show on that, like what that could be, right? Because it's not just a 90-mile-an-hour arm, which at our level, you need a guy or two at the top of that rotation that's a fringy pro guy. Like if you're going to win at the highest level here, most teams are going to have a guy or two that doesn't belong there, right? So there's going to be certain measurables like that. But look, there's a million different ways. That's just the outlier. But there's also, you talk about arms. There's also guys that are unique and they have a unique delivery and that kind of thing. But pitching wise, we say the ability to compete in the zone, the ability to hold runners and fill your position. Like those are like three things that always play. And like I said, you got to have a certain stuff that's going to be recruitable for us in some way, shape, or form. And then for us, being an academic school, you have to have a certain grades. For us, it's someone in that 3.5 range GPA wise that takes good classes, and they really value education because if they have to have a value of the education, or this won't be a good fit. So those are kind of your barriers to entry. You got to be talented, and you got to want to get a great education. And then from there, there's just all these unique things that we try to look for. I mean, I think one is a winner. I think there's something about people who play on great teams and have been around really good programs. That's where your multi-sports things can come up. I mean, we're super excited about a few guys that we have coming in that are still playing in state Final Fours in football. And to me, that's transferable. You know what it's like to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And the two guys that I'm referring to aren't star players on their football team, but they also know how to play a role. And I think that's really, really, really valuable. So we talk about the winner's pathway. We want guys who have been around successful programs and who want to continue to try to be around successful programs, even outside of Denison. When they play in the summer, we want them to try to be on teams where they're helping their team win and not just playing to get their at bats or to get their innings. We want them to be a part of something where they're trying to win and help a team achieve high success. And then I think other little nugget is that we love great teammates and that can look in all different shapes and forms. I'm not always talking about the guy who is just over the top playing with joy. That's great as well, but to acknowledge a teammate's success. I mean, that to us is so valuable. It's so unique right now. And then I would say the last thing, I kind of glossed over it, but we do like kids who play with a certain level of joy. We don't want guys who look like they're going to the dental chair when they're playing baseball. They like being there. They like being around the game because I think what you'll find in college, even at the Division III level, and I hate to even say even at the Division III level because that kind of marginalizes, minimizes the talent that's at this level. But you're going to spend a lot of time doing it. And I've gotten to a point in my career, Jeff, where having 4 young kids, be around people who enjoy it. And so if you don't like playing baseball, if it's hard for you, like it's probably not going to be a good fit for us because, like I said, we spend more time with kids than other people's kids than we do with our own. So we just want to have an enjoyable experience as a coaching staff. That may sound selfish, but I'm just at a point in my career that's where where I want to go. So it's all those things: talent, grades, being a great teammate, being a winner, playing with joy, and just being someone that we want to be around is really, really important to us. And then there's so many layers to that. I think one, I would say if we had any kind of secret nugget, is that we try to be as transparent and vulnerable and as authentic as we can be in the recruiting process. And then what has happened over time is we've attracted people who want a similar experience. I tell everybody that I sit across from, everything I say isn't right. It's not like the only way to do this, but it's the way that we kind of do it. And so you have to get on board with the way we're doing this, or this wouldn't be a good fit for you or for us.
I want to ask you a couple other recruiting questions, just something that kind of came to mind. And I refer to social media a lot, maybe too much, but I think that's how a lot of people get a lot of information. And I think that's how a lot of, especially in the baseball world, and I think it's how a lot of people formulate opinions about various things, whether it's the next level of baseball or recruiting or whatever. I know that there was at one point I read something on social media about, and I didn't agree with how the coach went about this. I felt like it was a coach kind of being on a soapbox that maybe wasn't warranted at the time. But a coach said something about how he wouldn't recruit a player if the player, I don't know how it's phrased, but if a player throws a helmet, basically I'm crossing you off my list. If you can't control your emotions, then it's not going to work out for you. And this is another time where I sort of went to bat for the kid. And of course, you don't know the situation, but I kind of said, from my recruiting coordinator experience, I didn't mind a kid that threw a helmet for certain specific reasons. To me, like I'd rather have a kid, to your point about recruiting people that play with joy, I'd rather recruit somebody who pretty obviously cares about the results of the game. And obviously there are degrees to this, or maybe it's situation specific, but I just want to kind of throw this question to you for a parent that might be listening to this, or even a high school coach who maybe has this kind of player and isn't quite sure what to do with it or how to handle it, or whether that's something, whether the passion that a player shows by getting frustrated, coming back to the dugout, throwing a glove if they get pulled off the mound for a bad outing, or a guy has a big situation in the game and doesn't come through and he's upset about it. He feels like he left his team down, comes back in the dugout and kind of throws his helmet. Because, frankly, you'll see that in big league games sometimes, especially in bigger situations when guys are frustrated. How do you, as a college coach, feel about a guy who shows that kind of emotion in the dugout? Obviously that's something that you maybe isn't maybe the healthiest way to do things, or maybe something you might try to tweak a little bit, or help a guy just to kind of figure some things out once he gets on campus. But generally speaking, recruiting-wise, how do you feel about players that show that type of emotion in a game, where they might throw a glove, throw a helmet, something like that, when they don't come through in big situations, or they just have a poor outing?
Well, yeah, I don't know if it was my post, but I got a lot of flack for this. I got a lot of love on there. So I will tell you, it became a quick way to get clicks on some. Cross this guy off my list, right? Cross him off my list, or saw mom give the kid a Gatorade, cross him off the list, and so I made a post one time where I said, saw a kid throw his helmet, cross him off my list, and I just wrote, just kidding. I actually thought, hey, I wonder what's wrong with the kid today, hopefully he's all right, so, and so anyways, it blew up, and I had people taking shots at me, but I also had a lot of people supporting it. Look, we're all human, right? And so I don't want to condone some of the behavior, because sometimes it's childish and petty and very selfish. Like, it's like I always say, you got to earn the right to throw a glove, or you got to earn the right to throw a bat, right? Like, I remember my senior in high school in the national championship game, I got called out on a bang play, and for the first time in my life, I chucked the helmet. I grew up with a father who didn't condone any of that kind of stuff. And I remember my head coach, Coach Shalley, being the aggressive man that he is, came down and said, "Mike," and he screamed. And I turned up and I kind of got out of my mind, and I looked over at him and he goes, "Were you safe?" And I said, "Yeah." And he went out and he argued the call. Probably the coolest moment for me in my life, by the way, to have that kind of support. But that's a one-off though, Jeff. You know what I mean? Like, that's a putting my however many years of playing sport on the line and getting caught out in a tough situation, right? So that's that. So, but there's also the 8 a.m. game where Billy wants to make it all about himself and throws his helmet. That's not good. So I don't tend to do that. I tend to think that, first of all, the game should be played with a little bit of passion, and sometimes things are going to happen. I like to think in our culture, our guys will take care of that. So we'll take a risk on a kid who's got some passion, some spunk, because it won't fly here. We'll clean that up pretty quick, that kind of behavior. But it's like, I hate to be wishy-washy, you know what I mean? Probably like every answer for me, I don't think it's one size fits all. I don't like seeing kids do that in certain situations, especially young kids. But I also get it. If I've worked my tail off all year long and I get called out on a bad pitch and I'm competing my brains out and it hurts in that moment, I may act out of character. And that shouldn't be a life sentence. But I also shouldn't do it on a regular basis, if that makes sense. So, to cross them off my list, we'll take it, right? You chuck your helmet in the right situation, you can stay on our list for something like that in the right way.
I think it's a good answer. And I like asking these questions because I think, I try to ask questions on this podcast that real people out there have, that real parents have, that real high school coaches out there have. Like, if a high school coach is going to maybe a high school coach has a player who he thinks belongs at the next level, and he's going to call Mike Deegan and say, hey, Mike, I've got a guy here I think can play for you. He's got a little bit of an anger issue sometimes. He's known to throw a helmet from time to time. Like I think that it's important for high school coaches to know how to approach that when they're talking to someone, because I don't think that necessarily means a guy can't play or can't can't compete and can't have success at the next level. But like you said, there's certainly situation specific, and it's not something you want to see all the time, but it's maybe not something you mind seeing from time to time, especially in a big situation.
Right. Well, and I would say this too, for the coaches part of it, I would say don't do what society thinks you should do, and that's why context is everything, and sometimes I don't want to get share too much, but there are kids that have that have issues, and they're struggling with things, especially high school coaches, youth coaches. I mean, if the kids got mom and dad are fighting at home and there's some stuff going on, right? Sometimes baseball is their only outlet, and emotion can pour over there. So sometimes it's not about the game. It's not about the poor performance. They bought a lot of stuff up, and it came out in that moment. And so I just wouldn't do anything based off of what you think, other people would think. That's maybe one little thing that I've always learned is that, the context is really important, and there's a human behind that player, and a lot of times it's a kid struggling and reeling, and there's bigger issues there. And sometimes baseball or basketball or football, whatever, is their outlet. And sometimes just trying to put your arm around them and see what's up. Maybe not in that moment. Maybe you have to make an example out of them and dress them down for that behavior. But after the game, you say, hey, I've noticed this about you. What's really going on here? Like what's really, this can't just be about you striking out. And sometimes you can uncover some pretty special stuff there, and that's really what our job as coaches is to really care about our people and to humanize this process. So, I don't know. A lot of times that helmet throw is just masking a bigger issue, and our job is to maybe help out if we can.
This is great stuff. I want to go back to the multi-sport athlete thing when it comes to recruiting. And not to focus on this conversation, but the conversation that I was having with another guy that I know and respect in the baseball world, and this was a different guy made the post, and another guy and I were kind of going back and forth, and it wasn't like an argument; it was a conversation. I mean, the other guy basically supported the view of the original post, and I was kind of giving my points of view. But part of the conversation there was, if you really want to play baseball in college, for example, you should take some time, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and just focus on baseball to be as good as you can be. But I want to ask you again, as a college coach and a recruiter, someone who's a very successful assistant coach, do you lower your expectations a little bit? And I don't mean that in a negative way at all, but do you lower expectations a little bit for a guy that plays multiple sports compared to the player that plays baseball year-round? So, example, you see two guys that are pretty similar. Player A is a little bit more polished on the field, but both have really good athletic abilities. So player A, who's a little bit better on the field, a little more polished and a little more, you can see maybe he's gotten lessons and he's a little more clean mechanically. But you talk to his high school coach, and the high school coach says, yeah, for the last couple of years he's been focusing on baseball, year-round, trying to get to this point. Okay, that's great. He's there. He's a good player. Player B, on the other hand, you call the high school coach and he says, yeah, man, I think he's a good baseball player, and I think he's going to be great when he focuses on baseball year-round, because right now, he's a wide receiver on the football team, and he's a shooting guard in the basketball team, and I've only got him. He only plays baseball for me in the spring, and he plays a couple months in the summer, then he's back into football. Do you have a little bit lower a little bit of a lower bar for the guy that plays other sports, knowing that he probably shouldn't be quite as good because he's not playing all year round, but also do you feel like he has a higher ceiling? Does that make sense? Do you expect a little bit less from the high school player who's a multi-sport athlete as opposed to the guy who's playing year round when you're recruiting them?
Yeah, I mean, so look, I think a lot of it's time of the year too. I mean, I think, I would be lying if I would say that kids sometimes hurt themselves, maybe like in a showcase format, like where, guy tries to showcase in, whatever, November or December. and that's a whole other topic, by the way. But anyways, he does that, and he's played football, and now he just picked up a bat that day and went to the showcase. Right? He cannot look good, and you know, if I'm being completely honest, there's 100 guys there that day or whatever. You probably don't have time to like sift through everybody's backstory, right? So I'm trying to give you the most honest, transparent answer I can. So that could hurt you, right? So I think if I'm a parent, you know, I think being strategic about what events you go to and when you go is really, really important. So sometimes people think just going to an event is going to help you, but if you're not in good baseball shape, that could really impact you. Now, your larger question, you know, when I was listening into you there, Jeff, I was thinking about, I have some friends that coach at, you know, mid-majors in the South, and they're from the North, and what they'll say is that in the South you get a much more polished baseball player because of the ability to play year-round, et cetera, et cetera. But in the North you get some guys that are stronger, better athletes, and they haven't quite reached their ceiling yet baseball-wise. And I think, and you can look around at me, I think, you know, I don't want to speak for programs, but I can just speak through observation. But you can see some schools, even like Power 5, top 10 programs, that have transitioned a little bit, and they're taking a lot of those guys from like New England that were multi-sport hockey players, etc., and they may have a bigger upside in college. So you'll see that. But I think that's the job of the college coach is really to, do you believe in your player development ability, you know, or do you want a finished product? Those are the questions that college coaches have to ask themselves, and I don't know if there's a right answer for that, by the way. Like, we're not a pro organization. We have a 4-year window. Pros have, you know, they're trying to get guys to the big leagues, which you may be able to invest 10 years or 8 years in their development, where in college, you know, you may want some guys that can perform right away. So once again, I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all, but I do think it's all part of the story. I can just speak for us. I think we like a little bit of that diamond in the rough guy that for us, for them to quote unquote fall to our level, it's a little bit of the island of misfit toys. So if you find a kid that maybe has played 3 sports and you know, if they can get to where they just play one sport in college, they could take off. But I've also seen guys, Jeff, that have played one sport and specialized that still continue to grow and develop. So I'm really all over the map with it, but I do think there's definitely more potential with guys who haven't invested their whole career in the baseball only development side of things.
Can I ask if there are any absolutes that you feel like you need to see either from pitchers or hitters in order to be able to recruit them? And maybe one example would be they have to have certain bat-to-ball skills, meaning when they're facing high school competition, they're not swinging and missing a lot as a hitter.
That's a great one, by the way, right? It's a great one you just said.
Yeah, well, I mean, for don't ever know how other guys feel, but that's something that I was taught kind of early on, and I bought into, and then maybe on the mound, it's, you know, I don't know what it is for you on the mound, but are there certain absolutes that you feel like if a hitter doesn't have this, or a pitcher doesn't have this, or maybe it's like one of these two things or whatever, but just kind of trying to speak to parents or athletes, or again high school coaches that are trying to sell some players. Are there certain absolutes for your program that you feel like you need to see, just as far as their baseball skills go, in order for them to be recruitable for Denison?
Yeah. I don't, you know, and I'm not trying to push on it. You can tell, and I'm not saying just like my recruiting talk, Jeff. I'm laughing as I'm saying it, but I'm not saying I'm right with any of this. But I am more of a gray area guy, so I struggle with the word absolutes. But I can tell you some things that we really, really value, and I can tell you some things that are going to make it tough. I think as a position player, athleticism plays. So a guy who can run and defend is going to get way more opportunities than the guy who can just hit. Now, where I say I struggle with that is I think high-level hitters are always in demand. And the kid that just left our program this past year was a first-team All-American. He was a hitter. Like, he could just flat-out hit. But I think when you just have the one trick, like just being able to hit, like you better really be able to hit in college, and that's really hard to tell if that's gonna translate. But the ability to run and defend is going to give you way more opportunities, and it's going to give us a much more give us many more options on how we can get that young man onto the field someday, right? Like if they're just a first baseman, it's tough, right? But if they're a shortstop and they get up the line at a sub 4.4, I think we got a shot, right? There's there's going to be a chance that person can grow and develop and become an impact player for us. So I would say that on the position player side, the athleticism is at a premium. On the pitching side of things, I don't want to back off it because the stuff has to be there. But a guy who's effective at getting out at whatever level they're on, I think that plays up. I think those guys have a chance of evolving at the next level. Meaning, while their stuff may not be great, if they have a habitual habit of getting hitters out, they tend to be able to get hitters out as they develop and grow and they get older. That may be by increasing stuff. I think the one thing that I think we've gotten better at in the game of baseball is developing guys, like not just Denison, but everywhere. Like we now know that, there are ways to increase velocity, and it's not through just weighted balls or implements. Like that's one means to it, but by creating better movers, by creating stronger athletes, like we can increase stuff a little bit now. Now, and I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I'm not saying we're going to take a guy who's 80 miles an hour and make them pitch in the big leagues at 97. I'm not saying that. But we can get their stuff a little bit better. But if they don't have that competitive spirit, and that kind of goes hand in hand with getting guys out, if they lack that competitive spirit, I haven't figured out a way to increase that. Like that's, and maybe that's a flaw of me as a coach, Jeff, but I haven't been able to increase that competitive fire, competitive spirit, the ability to win. Like I haven't, we don't have the formula for that. I think we do have somewhat of a formula, and I wouldn't say that's not like pixie dust, but if they're willing to put the work in, I think they can become a better athlete and a better mover, which will translate to better velocity and better stuff. But I haven't found that recipe on the compete side, if that makes any sense at all.
It does, and I loved how you just said with pitchers that it's the ability to get outs. That's something that I used to talk about a lot as a recruiting coordinator myself, and it seems like so simple that it seems too simple. It's like one of those things, well, like, no kidding, he's a pitcher. Of course he's trying to get outs. But some guys just have a knack at it, and some guys, I don't know if you ever use this term, but some guys I would term barrel finders, just meaning like their stuff looks really good and they throw really hard, but man, does that guy get barreled a lot. Like he just gives up a lot of barrels, and no matter how, to me, like no matter I was a hitting coach and a hitter, and for me, when I'm evaluating pitchers, that's how I evaluate it a lot. Like you let the hitter's feedback tell you how good this pitcher is. Like no matter what the radar gun's telling you or how sharp that slider looks, if he's getting hit a lot at the level that he's pitching currently, high school or travel ball, it's hard to imagine him missing more barrels when he goes to the next level. But at the same time, the guy that's not lighting things up and the stuff doesn't look that great, but he's missing bats. He's getting guys to hit balls off the handle, off the cap. He's getting rollovers. He's getting weak ground balls. Like there's something to like there, whether or not and of course now you guys probably have different tools to recruit than the last time I coached in college was 2014, and we didn't have I wasn't going to tournaments where there was a Rapsodo set up most of the time and things like that. And you didn't have a lot of metrics, like you couldn't go on a website and see what this guy's spin rate was for different pitches. But that was a lot of times, how I evaluated pitchers was just, what were good hitters doing against him, or bad hitters for that matter. If a bad hitter's barreling this guy up, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, that's it. And for us, like we're not going to get a guy who's 95 and the number one on his high school team, and we're not going to get that kid. But what we get a lot, this is kind of where, and this is what we did at Marietta too in some ways. Like we'll get the guy who I won't use name. We one of the best pitchers we've had here. He was on a team with a Power 5 guy, and his high school coach said to me, "I'm going to win one game though. I'm going to go with the guy that ended up coming to us." And to me that says it all, right? Like that, like he didn't have quite the measurables. But he was the one that if you had to win one, like that's the guy you want to go with. And I say that all due respect to the higher level guys, because look, in order to get out to the Power 5 school, you're going to have a certain arsenal, right? Let's not kid ourselves. I don't want to make this, you can't be 78 and survive in the SEC. Like or I shouldn't say you can't. You would be in a major outlier, right? Like, and so I don't blame those guys. Like you have to have a certain stuff, but you mentioned the Rapsodo and things like that. To me, those now become tools for us to enhance that kid's profile once he gets here, because we've had really good success with that. Where, okay, like he may not test out great on some of those metrics, but we can manipulate grip. We can manipulate some arm slot stuff. We can do some things and get to where that machine, because those things are very effective, by the way. Like, those things don't lie either. You can get a guy's fastball out of the dead zone by doing some things, by using those tools, and that's where we use it. But I'll go back to what I originally said, though. If they don't have that compete, I haven't figured out a way to manipulate that. You get what I'm saying, Jeff? But we've figured out a way to get a guy's fastball to not be so flat, or we've figured out a way, like, we figured that out. But if the guy doesn't know what it's like to have a runner on second base and chase the two from the catcher and have all the stuff that the game presents, if they can't handle that, that's tough for us to simulate and make them a better collegiate pitcher.
Love of the game and the compete factor are a couple things that I think are very, very tough. And not, like you said, it's not impossible, but they're outliers, guys that can sort of learn that stuff. Sometimes I think that there are some underlying things there. It's maybe the kind of culture that they were in for their high school program, or maybe it's just the kind of environment they grew up in. And sometimes these guys get in a winning environment and realize, like, it's okay for me to be this way. And then they become maybe this player that they've been sort of suppressing. But yeah, for the most part, the compete factor and the competitiveness is not something you can necessarily coach. Sometimes a good environment will bring it out of guys, but you're, like you said, I don't know that there's a specific formula to bring that out. I'd like to just kind of finish up, Coach Deegan, with one other question. And I like to really dig into winning programs and see what's really underneath. I think we've talked about a lot of things that you guys do, but the one last question I want to ask you is just, if you could answer this, what separates Denison from other programs? Everybody is recruiting, everybody is developing, everybody is out at the same types of events, everybody's practicing the same amount of time. Everybody's doing similar things at practice. There aren't major differences in most of those things with most programs. If you could point to one or two things, what are some things that Denison does differently from other programs? What makes you guys different? At the end of the day, the most important factors for you to have the success that you've had and to continue to have that success going forward. Almost like if we stop doing this, or we're not as good at this one or two things, like we're not going to be nearly as good of a team as we are right now.
Yeah. So first, I thank you for the compliment. It's hard for me to hear that. I almost cringe because I'm wired to think that we're not very good. And I would say that's part of what we do well. It's a gift and a curse once again. And I'm trying to do better with that, trying to celebrate some of the small victories along the way. But I think, one, it's our obsession with improvement. And by that, it's every aspect and every phase of our program, we're just trying to get better. And if you were to boil it down to how we kind of changed this program, turned it around, I would say, one, it started with attracting the right people, like getting the right people on board. And then it went from that to that development piece that I talked about earlier. And development for us is just being obsessed with every training session, every meeting, every weightlifting, every, across the board, just how can we be better and how can we do it at a high level? And so people have asked me that question before, I would say, it's just how we train. I think we practice at a higher level than most people have. And we're getting caught up to there. Like, I think the game is, people are doing so much of a better job of that now, but I think that was a competitive advantage of ours for a long time, is we just practiced really well. It didn't really matter what time of the year it was or what our record was. Our practice had such focus and such attention on improvement that I think we kind of just started getting better over the years. And then lastly, I would say for us is maybe a differentiator for us is just our relationships. And I know that sounds a little bit like coach speak, but I think we care a lot about each other, person to person, coach to player, player to coach. And when I say relationships, I don't want to make it sound like it's always perfect. There are plenty of guys in our program just at this moment who aren't happy with me. But I do think over the long run that we care a lot about each other. and we'll play hard for each other. We'll fight for each other. We care deeply about each other. And I think that's the one thing that I try to hold on to. And I use the word fight, and it's something we fight for because it's a lot of this stuff is very uncommon, as we've kind of talked about during this conversation. It's a very internal game right now, a very individualized game, and that selfishness will creep in. And we've had years where it creeps in, but I will roll my sleeves up and fight for us to try to do this together and to try to just become the best version of ourselves during this process. That's really it. So I wish I had some glamorous, sexy answer to give you, but it was getting the right people on board. It's practicing like crazy and try to improve, and then just caring a heck of a lot about each other. I would say maybe boils our program down in its growth, and I don't think that'll change a whole lot as we continue to try to move forward and become even better. It'll be about getting the right people. It'll be about getting better, and about caring about each other at a really high level.
Well, there might also be some hidden wisdom also when I what you just kind of said at the beginning of that answer about how you just tend to feel like you're not very good, and that's it's been a theme that I've heard from other guys on this podcast as well who are really good, but always, never feeling like you've arrived, never feeling like it's time to relax, and just always sort of having this mindset of we need to get better at this, this, and this, I think is a real key to sustaining success. I think when there are programs out there that have success and then sort of fall off, whether, it's program or an individual, I think that a lot of times leads to some more difficult times. Coach Deegan, this has been a really, really enjoyable podcast. I was excited to have you on for a number of reasons, to talk about your website. I always like having coaches on who have a track record of winning and a long track record of winning, which you do. There were some things we didn't get into in the podcast that I was kind of hoping that we would, but it's been a very, very enjoyable time. The time has flown by. I want to personally thank you for coming on here. You have a lot of other things you could be doing at this time of year, and to take time out of your day to join me here and have this conversation and to share all the things you've shared. It's really a special thing that Figured Out Baseball is able to do. If you haven't checked out the website, we've got hundreds and hundreds of free instructional videos, as well as several hundred free podcasts on the website. You can also find our videos and podcasts on YouTube for free, obviously. You can find our podcasts exclusively on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more. We're trying, with a goal here of Figured Out Baseball, we're trying to put as much content out there, like on your website, put it out there for free.
Once again, let me come to talk about Denison baseball and our program.